I know I'm not the only one that's picked up a book because it seemed like all of a sudden it was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it, and maybe I didn't want to avoid spoilers. Maybe I had like some FOMO. I don't know, but I know I'm not the only one. That is the magic of creating a fandom, like a raving fan base, and sometimes a cult like following. And a lot of these books that have these types of fan bases have a lot of things in common. Now, this isn't really a how-to video, but I did want to discuss some of the things that I noticed about really pop cultural phenomenon level books. If this was a how-to, we would all be doing it, so this is just kind of my observations, and I would love it if you guys put some things that you noticed down in the comments as well. So let's look at some of the strategies that turn a decently written book into a cultural phenomenon. I think the first thing is word of mouth marketing. This is every author's dream. It's when you have to go and tell everybody you know to read this book because it was so amazing and you just can't stop thinking about it and you need more people to talk to about it with. Word of mouth marketing is every business's, every creative person's dream. As long as people are talking about it, keeping you top of mind, you're going to keep growing. And that's because those peer-to-peer recommendations are way more powerful than somebody slapping you in the face with an ad or trying to promote the book themselves. And I know as an indie author, I promote my book myself, and a lot of us do because we kind of have to be our own biggest fan until we get some word of mouth marketing and people start talking about it and sharing it. And I actually have had people tell me that they've read my book specifically because I was posting so much about it that they kept seeing things that they were liking, and basically I was the peer-to-peer recommendation recommending my own books. They are behind me and they are linked below if you want to check them out. But this is legitimately how you start seeing the book everywhere. Usually a few popular content creators, as long as it hits a couple big ones, you see it a couple times, algorithms start picking up on it, keep showing you more of it, and all of a sudden you feel like it's every other video you've seen. So there's definitely something to be said for word of mouth marketing, good old book recommendations. Another thing that I've noticed with really popular books is that some people think they are poorly written, when in reality it's just that the emotional connection readers get to share and experience with the characters is trumping the line level writing. And to take a step back and look at it as a little bit of a wider perspective, it's actually giving the book more accessibility because it's not as highbrow as some people like to point out. So these books always have relatable characters, characters that you could see yourself being similar to or latching onto in some way. And the storylines are usually very character driven. It's not as plot heavy as some of the like epic books that you see out there, like the really intense world building. I think that's why romantasy picked up so quickly in 2020, is because it became really accessible as a romance with more of a fantasy backdrop. But with those really character-driven and emotionally driven stories, readers find themselves really invested in what happens to the character. They want to keep reading, which brings me to the point of having it usually be a large series. Looking back at the books that I knew were popular growing up and that I was really invested in, if you look at Divergent and The Hunger Games and Harry Potter, those are either trilogies or a longer running series. Because if you get readers invested in the beginning in these characters, you want to see the journey, and you get so invested, how many times can I say invested? And you get so invested in their journey that you feel like you know them and you've spent so much time with them reading one or two books that you're just going to keep reading. Having a longer running series also helps authors because it can keep fans speculating at what's going to happen. You know that if there's people out there speculating about a book that is not even marketed yet, you have a rabid fan base. And going back to the character-driven plots and everything, that's not to say that there is no world building or very little world building, but I would say along the same lines is that the world building is very accessible. These best-selling authors usually have some smaller things that readers can latch onto and get to know in the world that is similar to their own, but unique enough. You could take Harry Potter for an example and say that Quidditch is kind of like football, soccer. It's something that is familiar, but different enough that people want to learn more about it. People create Quidditch clubs. So there are things that readers can relate to while staying unique to that world. And that kind of brings me on to another point where it's creating this sense of community. And there's really two ways that you can look at this sort of community aspect. You can look at it as bringing people together and also dividing the people you have brought together. I've noticed that a lot of these books have very universally agreed upon moments and decisions that readers can all agree on. Duh. A character acted a certain way or something along those lines. Like off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the A Court of Thorns and Roses series, ACOTAR, and pretty much everyone can agree that in book 2, Tamlin was an ass. So you've brought these people under a common interest, under this umbrella, and then you split them into teams. So if you're looking at Divergent, you have the factions. If you're looking at Harry Potter, you have the houses. If you have ACOTAR, you have Asriel. Is he going to be with Gwen or Elaine? So you kind of create this basis for some sort of differentiating factor that gets people talking. It gets people arguing. Some people take it very, very seriously. But I do think that having some sort of a divide or side that people can take on issues that are kind of fun, like gives people something to root for. There is this other thing that also gets a lot of fandoms talking, and that's including Easter eggs or small lines, things that connect different stories, filling in these plot holes and gaps. And although filling in plot holes and gaps is just good writing, giving people something to discuss and weaving in these small details, these little Easter eggs, these kind of one-off lines that maybe they make sense later, and giving readers something to really piece together. You're giving them a mystery to solve. For me, as a writer, I am huge in laying out these Easter eggs, having parallel lines, and having these kind of callbacks that only you would notice if you really were in-depth reading. You got the eagle eyes, you're like, Swiftie, Marvel, ACOTAR. Like, if you are one of those conspiracy people that loves to really pick apart the language, that's my jam too. So that is what I write in my books as well. And I know that if I ever see somebody speculating that this line actually means this thing, I would know I've made it. Speaking of having made it, I have made it to my last point. So if you have liked this video at all so far, please hit subscribe, drop a comment, hit that like button, the notification bell, whatever you gotta do. Thank you. But the last point is having exclusive editions, having a box set, having sprayed edges, having gold foiling, I don't know. However you want to release a book, if it has an extra chapter, if it has a different POV, if it has anything really. I think that is another way to tell that a book has got this cult following is because there's, I don't know, 3 or 4 special editions of Fourth Wing that came out like 2 years ago. And that type of exclusivity, that type of special edition is really popular with the bigger publishing houses. However, it is becoming a little bit more accessible to indie authors for more of an upfront cost or crowdfunding cost. But there are some printing companies that indie authors could order from, and if you want a video on the ones that I have found out about, I have not had any of my books printed through them, but just discussing which ones I've found are out there, I can make a video on that too if you want. But having those special editions and things that readers that are really in love with the series are going to want to buy is something I've noticed a lot of lately. Sometimes it feels like a cash grab. Sarah J. Maas and all of the Crescent City books at different retailers with different bonus chapters. But I do think that that is something that some of these big series have. And it's something to kind of take note of in the publishing world. If you made it this far, you're at the very end, drop a comment and let me know which fandom really made you feel like you were missing out on something to the point where you jumped in and read the thing or watched the movie or show. That's all I got. Thanks for watching. Bye.